Another affordable Glock alternative, the Saricam S-19, something I had never heard of before, but we got an early chance to handle it here on the channel. Tabletop review on Field Strip coming up next on GB Guns. And as you're typing that, oh no, not another Glock clone comment. Yep, that's basically what this is, a Gen 3 Glock 19 done differently. If you've been hiding under a rock for the last couple of years, the patents are expired, and since Glock really hasn't made much advancement or changes in the last couple generations, that means that other people can make a Gen 3 Glock 19 pretty much part for part. And offer it at different prices and offer improvements and advancements over the original Glock design. Over on our website, which I can't mention here, but you guys know the name of the channel, and it's that and Depot. I recently did a roundup of 8 Glock alternatives and tried to compare them as best I could, as well as list out what makes those features different. This is a 9th one. I just didn't have it in time to, when I was writing that article. I'll probably do an update. Inside the box we have our manual in a nice sleeve, the gun, 2 magazines, which is nice. We have a brush, a bore mop, a bore brush, and a copper brush for getting the stubborn stuff out. A nice low profile trigger lock, which is pretty cool. A cleaning cloth, and a vial of oil that actually has some oil in it. It smells to me a lot like motor oil, but guess what? Motor oil works fine on firearms, as does vegetable oil. If you were in the industry news sphere about 2016, 2017, you'll remember the big expose when a lot of the major lubricant companies were sort of exposed for putting food dye in vegetable oil, calling it gun oil, and saying it had magical properties. With that covered, next up is going through the manual. Now, before you start complaining about me going through the manual, first off, I use chapter markers. Check at the bottom. You can skip this if you want. I look at the manual for 2 reasons. One, it shows us how well the company wants you to understand and enjoy the product. The better the manual, the more likely you are to know what you're doing and better time you're going to have. The other reason is for the YouTube moderators to see that when I field strip this, I am not building a gun, I am not facilitating the sale of a gun, I'm not disassembling a gun, I'm doing basic end user level maintenance, which is part of a safety protocol to make sure that this firearm will be safe to use. The manual is pretty nice. We've got full color images. It is rather wordy, but has a lot of nice detail in it. It goes in pretty good depth about features as well as warnings. You can see we've got full color photos there, all nicely done. As far as ammunition, since people always ask about plus P, this is a 4-inch barrel. 4 inches is the SAMI spec for 9mm, so there's no need for plus P. However, the closest mention I could find in there is it warns not to use reloaded ammunition because it won't be to SAMI, CIP, or NATO spec. That's implying that CIP and NATO spec and SAMI specs are acceptable in this gun, and well, 124 NATO is 10% higher pressure than 124 SAMI spec ammunition. Plus P ammo is 10% higher pressure than regular SAMI spec, so if it can take NATO ammo, it's implied that it can also take plus P ammo. I've got nice notes in here on oiling, and I'm going to actually be doing that on this gun. Normally I run guns straight out of the box, but this one needs a little bit of attention. More on that later. It also includes in here that Saricam has a wide variety of sight options and even connector options. It looks like they've gone all in this. You can pause and try to read those specs, but the best place to find those specs and see them clearly and easily is going to be in the pinned comment over on my website, which is where all of this will have been published before you guys are seeing it here on YouTube, because that's the way I roll. All right, enough of the manual. Let's get this out of the way and take a look at the gun. So what are we getting with the S-19? Well, as you can tell from the design, and you'll see more when we field strip this, it's basically a Gen 3 Glock 19, even down to the finger grooves. However, some ergonomic changes have been made. We've got the enlarged mag release button, lightning cuts to the slide, and before you start to get too crazy about speed holes, let me tell you something I have observed in the 500 or so handguns that I've reviewed, and that is the lighter the slide is, the less reciprocating mass, the easier it is to control recoil. So it's quite possible this is going to shoot softer than a standard Glock 19 because you don't have as much weight slamming back and forth. Alright, let's get on to our typical tabletop review. With the slide locked back, we can see we're empty here. Do we get magazine release or ejection? It's release. as one might expect. These magazines appear to be made by Saricam or made for them. They don't have brand markings on them, but I've also never seen them before, although you note they do have the reversible mag catch cuts on there. And I did notice a secret trick. If you hold the magazine while you're in your left hand while you're loading, you're only going to get 14 rounds in here. However, if you hold it in your right hand while you're loading, you can get 16 rounds in there, which is kind of nice. It's just a joke, guys, of course, but I like that there are witness windows on either side. I prefer them to be either on the left side or the back of the magazine so that you can do a quick check like that, almost like checking tire pressure with an old school pop-out gauge. If you've ever been to a training course or something like that where you need X amount of rounds for a drill, or you've just run one drill and got to run the next and make sure you have enough rounds, it's nice to have witness windows like this to let you know what's going on there. These do not appear to have a steel lining, but the polymer is fairly stiff, and in the shooting impressions video I will run this gun with a variety of aftermarket Glock magazines, including some original Glock magazines, and we'll discuss how those things fit and feed, since I have noticed that with different polymers you end up with different thicknesses, and that results in different insertion and release experiences with different guns. Right, starting up front, we've got a bit of play here, and I did notice right out of the box at the store some concern. It looks like there's a wee bit of frame droop here. If I line up this line with the crack on the board as best I can, you can see it looks like there's a little bit of frame droop. That sometimes happens in polymers with manufacturing, depending on the color of the polymer, so it may not be indicative of all the guns, and it really doesn't matter. It's just kind of a visual thing. But yes, different colored polymer results in different consistency, so maybe that's a thing, maybe it's a manufacturing issue, but what I noticed was that it didn't want to close on its own from a light slide. Now if I rack all the way and release, we have no issues there. That could be a fitment thing, like if the rails aren't in here perfectly. It might also be that this gun is entirely dry and maybe built to tighter tolerances than it needs to be, causing a little bit of friction. So that's why I'm going to oil this. As far as if that's going to really affect accuracy or if it's going to break in, we'll find that out when we get to the range. Alright, up front, you can see our barrel extends just a wee bit. We have a slight bowl cut, if you will, on the from the slide. 2 rail slots underneath. These lightning cuts, as I already mentioned, are reducing reciprocating mass, and even more importantly, they're doing it up front, which should help with a fight nosedive as the gun returns to battery. We have some textured points up here as a memory spot. It's not a very aggressive texture. You will feel it to work as a memory spot for finger straight. I don't think it's going to really help with holding that support hand on. I usually dig my thumb into the rail slot there to do that. No texture on the front of the trigger guard, however we do have a slight hook for those that like to use that. The edge here of the trigger guard is a little more square like a Glock. I'm not sure it's Glock knuckle bad, but it's definitely not as rounded as some of the other clone-based things, if you will. You can see our texturing on the front strap are the nice squares. That works in all directions, and we have the finger grooves. Finger grooves for me have never worked. I wear double XL gloves, and as you can see, my finger is going to fall right on top of that ridge, and then I end up off all the way down with some finger hanging. This happened to me on the original Glock 19. It's why I ended up installing a mag well, because what would happen is I'd slam in a mag, and just like right there, I get some skin pinched between the magazine and the grip. It's uncomfortable, and depending on how much skin is pinched, it could even prevent the mag from seating properly. So just something to keep in mind, and this is universal on all Glock 19 size guns for guys with bigger hands. If you've got bigger hands, you know what I'm talking about. We have a hint of texture on the sides. Again, it's not very aggressive. It's more than this smoothness here, which is very nice and smooth, but not a lot of texture. Underneath, we have some beveling to serve as a mag guide. We've got the square textures on the back strap, which is really, I mean, when you're shooting, the gun is trying to rock this way. It's not trying to expand. It's not trying to swim so much. So really, front strap and back straps where you need texture, and this has it. Slide to frame fit in the back is very, very tight. which again could be the machining, could be a tolerance thing, but it's why I'm going to break my normal protocol and actually apply some oil to this before firing it, just because I can already see that it needs a little bit of help. Our sights are steel, which is nice. They appear to be Glock pattern, and it's a 3-dot setup, but this is not a camera trick. They've deliberately done that neat visual trick where the rears are kind of blurry and the front is nice and sharp, which helps you focus on that front sight. They're nice bright dots, so I appreciate that. Coming around the right side of the gun, you can see we don't have any controls. Magazine release appears to be reversible. The serrations in the rear are blocky, but they grip. Yeah, there's a little bit of friction there. This needs some oil. And up front, you can grab using those windows. Just keep in mind that might get hot. We have some kind of stylized lightning cuts on the barrel hood, and I can tell you this pistol feels lighter than I expected when I first picked it up. Next, we'll field strip the S-19 and take a look inside the gun. To field strip the S-19 is the same that we already know. We're going to check for clear, release the striker. In fact, while I'm here, let's do some trigger talk, because I was actually really impressed. Now this one's described as 5.5 pounds. As you saw in the manual, they offer a variety of options, but this is pretty nice. So safety dingus of course works. We have a moderately weighted take up to a wall. Little creep, very crisp break, and a positive forced reset shooting you a little past the wall. It's pretty nice. So going that slow, I got that creep, but if I were to wall break, it's good. It's nice. It's got a little extra weight, but if you're capable of opening a door, you're capable of working a trigger of any kind of weight. I'm so tired of people getting wrapped around the axle about tenths of a pound on their trigger weight. And there's this weird arc. Sorry to go off on a tangent here, but there's an arc of skill where low skill requires a really good trigger to compensate for lack of other abilities to control the firearm. Then as you gain skill, that becomes less important. And then if you get into real high-end competition, you're trying to shave off hundredths of a second on your splits, things like that, then once again it goes back to a light and short trigger being super important to assist you and give you that little bit of edge. But for defensive shooting, regular shooting guys, it doesn't freaking matter. Alright, let's field strip this thing. We're going to release the striker, pull down on these takedown tabs on both sides. I use my support hand like this and squeeze like that to move the slide back a little, and then you bring it forward and it comes off the front. Again, a little bit of friction there. I was taking a look earlier. I don't see anywhere. Maybe there. It's hard to tell with this factory oil still on there, but I will be lubing this. You can see we've got a dual spring captured recoil assembly, which is excellent. To release the barrel, it's Browning action. Tap down to unlock it, move it forward a little bit, and it'll come back out the rear. And now we can take a look in our slide. Some of that gumminess I'm feeling might very well be the Cerakote. Cerakote does that to firearms. You can see where some of it has worn off a little bit. We have a nice rounded and ramped trigger safety there. Everything is basically like a Glock 19. I believe we should have good parts interchangeability for you guys that like to tinker. If you haven't done that yet, the Glock is a great place to learn because parts are inexpensive and everywhere, and you can try all kinds of stuff. They even, Saricam themselves offers a different slide lock release if you want the one with a little bit of a bump or whatnot. But everything seems pretty basic there. Now we can take a look at our barrel and do our chamber fitment. Chamber fitment, I'll be using a piece of Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. Why? Because this nickel plating reduces friction. It also is corrosion resistant for a round that we're going to be handling all the time, such as doing this in each and every gun. We have some nice chamfer all the way around. That should help with feeding. That's a nice touch. We'll drop this round in, listen for a plunk, just like that. We want to see if we can rotate the round freely, and we can. This is where you can check for burrs. If you feel anything in yours, clean it first, and then try again. I'm doing this right out of the box, and it feels fine to me. And then looking at chamber support is how much of the brass beyond is exposed, and it looks like they have remedied the Glock problem of the unsupported or under-supported, less supported chamber. This appears to be fully supported, which makes sense for a gun designed to run with NATO pressure ammo. I believe fully supported chambers are important because should you have an overpressured round or a case rupture, failure of any sort, with it being sealed in there and fully supported, those forces are going to want to leave the barrel. If not, and it wants to blow out the brass, that's when you end up with it blowing out into your hand. Typically that destroys the frame, which is the firearm in the United States, and it can, result in a bad day. So I like fully supported chambers. Prior to reassembly, I'm going to apply a little bit of lube and see if that helps things on here. I think it could just be the there's Cerakote wearing off these front rails. That's probably what's causing the friction, and I bet that'll be gone by the end of the range review. So we'll give that a try. In the range review, while I get all this back together, and I'll put a little bit on the barrel hood because I noticed this edge already taken a little bit of wear, which is completely natural and normal on such a barrel hood design. In the range review, you will see my absolute first shots through the gun, and of course, as always, I will let you know what ammunition I'm using. I don't pull any tricks. I'm not here to show off or make anything look good or bad. I want to create a replicable experience so that what you guys see in my videos is something you can do at home. I'll bring some extra ammo in case I need something a little bit spicier for this to break it in. Sometimes that is a truth. Then we'll do full magazine plus one and see how these mags run. I want to get that oil there. Let's see if we fixed it. Not quite. It is going smoother though. Yeah, it may be that Cerakote is causing a little of gumming. After full mag plus one with the included mags, we'll do the multi-mag test since this takes Glock pattern magazines, and I'll run 8 or so, maybe 10 aftermarket Glock pattern magazines, let you know how they fit and what works best or what doesn't work in case that exists. Then we'll take it over to the What's for Dinner table, our trademark test, to see what the gun eats, running 10 different additional loads through it of different case materials and types, different projectile weights, etc., and printing them on paper at 7 yards so you can see if there's a notable accuracy or point of impact shift. Then the spinner test for sights and trigger control, which I have a good feeling for this. This is a nice trigger and these sights are very nice and clean. 5 shots from 7 yards for practical accuracy while I gather my concluding thoughts, which is the next segment, the after shots. As always, if you want to know more about this thing, where to find it, specs, things like that, and see a deeper dive, check the pinned comment over on my website that YouTube won't let me mention, even though I don't sell anything, is where the full review will be. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for 9 years of support, and we'll see you on the range.